We did a video recently talking about hero running back and how the data supports taking hero running back based on average round-by-round production from the last really 8 years in fantasy football. And one of the top comments on that video talked about how people are not scared this year, and there's I feel like this is like an uprising. There's a small group of people that aren't afraid to go double running back this year. And double running back is edgy, it's hip, and we are going to endorse it. And we're going to talk today about how you can master the double running back strategy and actually make it work for your team, taking advantage of the upside that's available with running backs at the beginning of drafts, while also not completely screwing your team by not taking a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. Because, again, all the data would point towards you need to take a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, but we say data schmata, right?
Data schmata.
Make sure you drop a like on this video and make sure you're subscribed because, again, a lot of you guys are not subscribed, and it would really help Nathan and I out if you would take 2 seconds and press subscribe. We're going to bring you the most accurate, in-depth analysis for fantasy football this year, including in season, that we possibly can, and you can help us out by doing those 2 things. Like and subscribe. Appreciate it. Let's talk about double running back. Let's look at a page from our draft guide, actually. You want to talk about the definition of a double running back this year in fantasy football.
The definition of a double running back strategy. If you looked it up on Google, it would show up just like this. Prioritize running back in the first 2 rounds. The emergence of committee backfields and the increased injury risk at that position has really led to a decrease in the popularity of this strategy. And we made a big note on this in a video that we came out with last week where we were talking about the overall price of running backs and how this is really the first time in ever that we've seen so few running backs going in the first 24 picks of ADP in fantasy football. There is obviously a reason for that. A lot of it is because of how the NFL has treated running backs and the way they like to utilize them, right? A lot more committees, a lot more of like passing exclusive, receiving game exclusive with some pass blocking in there as well versus like a first and second down guy who's more of a bruiser, bigger body guy, and they're really complementary. See Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, the biggest example, but even a guy like Brian Robinson paired with like Antonio Gibson. And you're seeing that become more and more common. Marshawn Lloyd just being drafted alongside Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. Are we going to see more of this for the foreseeable future? Are we going to see more of a swing back to what we thought was reality with running backs previously, and that was bell cows who are getting a ton of volume? We really have yet to see what's actually going to happen long term. What we know about this year is we're in a brand new generation of running backs. We've got Breece Hall, who's going into his 3rd year, fully healthy off an ACL after being a running back 2 last year. You've got Bijan Robinson, who has an actual coordinator, and you have Jahmyr Gibbs, who's in one of those committees, but still happened to be a mid running back 1 last year as a rookie, and Christian McCaffrey, who's not young, but he's forever good. He's Christian McCaffrey. So those are kind of the top guys that we're talking about here. When you're talking about double running back in the first round, you are taking one of those 4 guys: CMC, Bijan, Breece, Gibbs. In the second round, it's Saquon or it's Jonathan Taylor. It's one of those 2 guys. Why, oh why, domain guys, did you exclude Devon Achane? Because...
Pause.
Let's talk about
We're going to talk about
actually.
We're going to talk about if you need to draft one of JT or Saquon, or if you can afford to draft some of the other guys, and we'll discuss each of them here later in the video because I do want to at least talk about that with you. But
it is worth talking about.
From 2016 to 2022, this strategy was obviously one of the most popular and most effective strategies in fantasy. I personally remembered using this strategy a ton when I was a kid because the disparity between a 2nd and 3rd round running back compared to a wide receiver was huge. It was like a full point or more per game, respectively, over wide receivers. Like the opportunity cost of waiting on running back was huge. But in 2023, or really 2021-23 is when the transition period started happening. We talked about it in some of these videos. As a result, you've seen, running back averages in round 2 and 7 and in 5 and 10 that are equal. And so like now you have this more spread out running back production. However, again, you still see this top heavy production. And one of the main concepts that you need to understand about double running back this year, and people will call this double running back, double hero running back, whichever one you call it. We call it double running back. One of the main concepts you need to understand is that people have over-adjusted so far. I need to look at this camera. People have over-adjusted for wide receiver so far that now, like Nathan mentioned, you pretty much only have 5 to 6 running backs going in the first 2 rounds of fantasy drafts, whereas you look even 2-3 years ago, you had at least 12, 10 to 12 minimum, right? I mean, it was always half and half, if not running backs dominated, right? And so people have over-adjusted now so far that guys, when you get to a year where you actually are projected to have a pretty strong running back year, this is one of those years. This is a year where you have a bunch of young guys in good offenses that project really well. We didn't have that last year, right? We didn't know. Brees was coming off of an ACL last year.
And a lot of aging guys.
We didn't know what Jahmyr Gibbs was last year. He was a rookie, right? Jonathan Taylor was holding out, and he was hurt on top of that with a new quarterback.
Saquon was holding out. Eckler was holding out. Jacobs was holding out. Chubb was
again,
Chubb,
we are now, this is not the same running back landscape that has caused people to stumble the last couple of years. Now we have an actual strong running back landscape. But people are not adjusting. And so the consideration to be made here in terms of the top 5 running backs in drafts this year, top 6 actually, is that Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor in a normal year in fantasy football would be dominant running backs that have a 19 point per game plus upside that in a normal year, even 3-4 years ago, they would have been going in the first round. All 6 of these guys would have been going in the first round.
Yep.
And then you would have had guys like Devon Achane and Kyron Williams and Travis Etienne all going in the second round. But because we've adjusted so far for wide receivers, you now have 2 guys who should be going in the first round in Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley. They have gotten pushed all the way down to the second. Meaning what? Meaning you can get 2 running backs. You can go double running back and get 2 running backs that 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago, you would have never, ever, ever got the chance to do because they would have been going in the first round because people were smarter back then and people weren't over adjusting for wide receiver. But now wide receiver is the sexy pick. Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley should be fringe first rounders. They should be 10, 11 range, easy, minimum. And you're getting them in the second. I don't think it means you only have to take one of those 2 guys in the second, but if you do get one of those 2 guys in the second with one of these running backs that you had, your upside to win your fantasy league is absolutely ridiculous. The sky is the absolute limit for your fantasy football team with these. You have 2 of these guys. I mean, look, there's a lot of factors here. They could get hurt. You've got to make sure they stay healthy, right? You've got to make sure that the offenses stay good. You know, people don't know how much AR is going to take away from Jonathan Taylor. Having 2 of these guys is a cheat code. Yeah. So let's talk about this. And what I want to do basically is talk about how you actually build the team around this. And the first, we talked about the first round double running back candidates: Christian McCaffrey, Bijan, Brees, and Gibbs. The second round, you mentioned JT and you mentioned Saquon.
Yep.
Let's have a discussion about some of these guys. Is Derrick Henry somebody you'd take in the second round for a double running back strategy?
At the tail end of the second rounds.
At the turn, 2-3 turn.
At the 2-3 turn.
Would you take him? Would you take him with Christian McCaffrey?
I'd probably go 50-50 receiver, running back there, and my running back pick would be Derrick Henry there because of the volume. And I would lean him and favor him because when you're looking at the wide receivers going in that range, which I want to touch on later in this video, their volume last year was like 110 targets,
right?
Each of them.
Yeah.
With Olave being in the worst offense, he had 140 targets, but it didn't really show the ceiling of production there. Henry by far and away has the highest ceiling there.
Yeah,
at that price.
And the next guy here I have written down is Kyron Williams.
100%. I'd rather have Kyron over Derrick Henry.
I would personally take Kyron Williams in the second round with a double running back build.
Yes.
I mean, I'm pairing Kyron Williams with a Bijan, Brees, or Gibbs probably.
Yep.
I'm doing that.
Yep.
Travis Etienne, this is an interesting one. Travis Etienne was undervalued to start the year. Now he's gotten back up to like the running back 11 spot, but would you build an Etienne, Christian McCaffrey, or Etienne Bijan pairing, and would you roll with that as your first 2 rounds in a startup draft?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that. If I had to do that, maybe. But again, you kind of see Etienne going lower than that every once in a while. Mm-hmm. He can fall into he can slide into the beginning of the 3rd round. So you could, I mean, if you wanted to gamble as a team that took a running back first round, wide receiver second, you could hope that Etienne comes back to you on the turn if you're at that like 1, 2, 3 spot.
Yep.
And you have a good chance at landing Etienne and still technically having like a double running back strategy.
Now, when you're looking at both ESPN and Yahoo ADP, in Yahoo ADP, you've got Kyron, Etienne, but then you've also got Devon Achane going here. And are you willing to take Devon Achane in the second round?
So this is where my opinion probably differs from consensus, and that is totally fine, right? I don't necessarily have an issue with you being super pro Devon Achane. I could eat my words at the end of the year, and honestly, I wouldn't be super shocked because of what Devon Achane in small sample sizes showcased last year. It was freaky. Like it was one of the freakiest things I saw all year. I had nightmares about it. With Achane, though, I think Achane is literally going at the 2-3 turn. So at the 2-3 turn, you're assuming that the team who had the 101 or the 102 drafted Christian McCaffrey, right? So they're going to be faced with the option of, do I take Devon Achane on top of Christian McCaffrey? To me, I think your hands have already been tied. You have to take Christian McCaffrey at the 101. Pretty much. But 2, Achane's upside in an offense where Raheem Mostert is competing for touchdowns, where Jalen Wright, yes, is competing for touches and touchdowns in that offense. I mean, he's literally in a 3 to 4 running back system there. Not to mention Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill also getting usage in the red zone. To me, I think there are better shots to take there. Like, number one, all the running backs that we mentioned beforehand, Kyren, Etienne, and Derrick Henry, they're all much safer. And honestly, with their volume alone, this is an unpopular opinion. I think their ceiling is higher than Devon Achane's just because of what they're getting in their offense. Wow. Okay. So that's just my personal opinion. And based off of the efficiency that we saw last year, I don't think anyone's denying, even the people that are pro Achane, no one's denying that Achane's efficiency is going to go down. That's absolutely going to happen. But to me, I think there are better shots to take at running back in that range that are a lot less risky and I want the volume. I want the volume as a running back. Like that's the discussion we've been having and why so many people have been veering away from running backs for the last couple of years is because the volume has been going down as a result of committees. Derrick Henry and Kyren Williams and Travis Etienne are not in committees. That's for sure. We are looking for the guys that are not in committees, and Devon Achane is the one outlier there. So.
Yeah, that is true. I think with Achane, if you're getting him, most of the time you're getting Achane at the turn, like you said. So if you're drafting Achane, into the third round, definitely comfortable with that. In terms of drafting him as your second pick in fantasy football, I'm really only doing that. I'm considering doing that if you're at the 211 or 212.
Or in best ball. He's a better best ball pick than he is a fantasy pick.
So what I wanted to do now is talk about, how to perform this strategy round by round and the best way to build the rest of your team around 2 running backs. And to do that, we're going to do a mock draft here real quick, just against air. We're going to do it against nobody, but we're going to talk through basically in this simulated Sleeper ADP mock draft, which Sleeper ADP is better than ESPN and Yahoo, granted. We're going to basically talk about how to build this team in all the steps that we need to. So looking at how we start here, you look at the first round, you see something like this. Christian McCaffrey, Chase, Hill, CeeDee Lamb, and Justin Jefferson. Great. There's been one running back off the board. So naturally, I think both of us would go Bijan Robinson here. You could go Breece Hall if you want to.
Bijan,
but Bijan,
it's whatever.
Bijan's my pick for Offensive Player of the Year as well. So, and wow, Sleeper's not working. That's crazy. But Bijan at this point, you're really happy getting a guy like Bijan at this point in the draft. So
yeah, and I kind of want to touch on while we're walking through kind of what this build eventually looks like as you go down this mock draft is I want to talk about the wide receivers past the first 2 rounds, right? Because everyone is talking about, hey, it's all fine and dandy to say that you go hero running back or that you go double running back in the first 2 rounds of your fantasy draft. Well, what about the upside that you're sacrificing at the wide receiver position if you don't take a receiver in the first 2 rounds? Understandable. I get it. Hero running back, I think I feel like we need to convince people of hero running back more than double running back. Hero running back is really the sell here because hero running back is taking a top running back really in the first round. It's taking Christian McCaffrey, Bijan, Breece, or Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round over a wide receiver. That's what we got to sell you on. And I think we've already laid out a pretty good argument on why there's a potential payoff in doing that this year. In the second round, I think it's a lot easier, honestly. I mean, I've pulled up Fantasy Pros consensus ADP, right? It averages out Yahoo, Sleeper, RT Sports, and it just takes the averages of all those ADPs and you put it together. And what are the running backs or what are the wide receivers going in the second round? You've got Ayuk going in the second round. Okay. You've got Chris Olave, you've got Drake London, you have Devontae Adams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, and actually even Puka Nacua going in that range at the beginning of the second round. I'd consider him a first round guy though. So kind of take him out there. So those receivers, I mean, half of those receivers, right? Nico, Brandon Ayuk, Olave, they either have target competition or they are in a terrible offense. Now, after I listed all those wide receivers, let's look in rounds 3 through 4, right? Because if you're going double running back in the first 2 rounds of your fantasy draft, what are you sacrificing and what wide receivers do you have to take in the 3rd and 4th round? Well, let's look at it. Jalen Waddle going in the 3rd round. Michael Pittman going at the 3-4 turn. Stephon Diggs, 3-4 turn. DK Metcalf, Cooper Kupp, DJ Moore is going in the 4th round right now. Just as much target competition and questions as Nico Collins, as Brandon Ayuk. Even I would even say he has just as many questions as Chris Olave, but that's because I'm lower on Olave and Derek Carr. I'm really lower on Derek Carr, not Olave. But you see those wide receivers there, even Amari Cooper, right? All of those receivers going in the 3rd and 4th round, they have just as many question marks, just as much competition, just as much opportunity for high or low-end wide receiver 1 upside as the guys going in the 2nd round. The receivers going in the 2nd round.
Right.
So to me, that's like, I'm just trying to be practical practical here and give you a bunch of guys, a bunch of names at wide receiver, because you're like, okay, well, I don't want to take the wide receiver 30 and be stuck with him if I can't get, if that's the first wide receiver that I take off the board. Well, it's not just wide receiver 30. They're not projecting out to be wide receiver 30. This is like based off of questions that they could potentially have going into the season. But the question marks are really about the same from 13 to 30. So I think you could easily see those players flip when you're looking at production at the end of the year, and you'd be just as well off taking wide receiver in the 3rd and 4th round as the 1st and 2nd.
Then at the turn, Gibbs, Taylor, Saquon, and Kyron Williams goes right before us. So again, this leaves us with a couple guys here at running back, Travis Etienne, Devon Achane, Derrick Henry, and again, we are probably going to lean Henry or Etienne at this point, so we'll take Travis Etienne here to kind of kick off our double running back draft. But then you've got to do what we like to call the 3-4-5 wide receiver room, and this is where after you take 2 running backs, you cannot do anything else in these rounds besides take wide receiver, right? So the second step here is going to be able to take a 3-4-5 wide receiver room. You've got guys like Waddle, Diggs, and Debo here. Who's your favorite?
Ooh, I'm a Debo guy here at this price. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good for Debo. So we'll take Debo Samuel here, right? A guy with rushing upside, a guy with receiving upside. And I think a lot of people just think, they naturally assume that if you don't take wide receiver, you are dead in the water in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round.
Right, because we always say hero RB is like honestly a respectable strategy as well. If you just take a running back 1st round, and then if you want to go receiver in 2nd round, you can. But I mean, double running back, a lot of people think is more risky than hero running back. It really isn't. Once you kind of jump over the ledge to dive into hero running back, you should be just as comfortable going double running back as well, because look at the guys going in the 2nd round at wide receiver compared to rounds 3, 4, and 5. I mean, Brandon Ayuk, Chris Olave, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Drake London, and Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. even going in the 2nd round sometimes, versus Nico Collins, Debo Samuel, DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Jalen Waddle, Tank Dell, Zay Flowers still a wide receiver 1 in his offense, Malik Neighbors all the way down in the 4th round, Cooper Kupp, Michael Pittman a wide receiver 1 in his own offense. Like, you're not dead in the water if you wait to take wide receiver 3, 4, and 5. Rounds 3, 4, and 5. Like, yeah, you need to take receivers there. If you go double running back up top, your hands are definitely tied. You're going to need to really, really lock down that position if you punt a couple rounds there. But don't think that your upside is any lower if you're waiting to take receivers until rounds 3 to 5. Because honestly, there are some guys that, in our opinion, have higher upside in rounds 3 to 5, maybe a couple more question marks than the guys going in the 2nd. But the guys in the 2nd, like Mike Evans, we kind of know what he is. If he gets a ton of touchdowns, he's going to be a wide receiver 1. If he doesn't, he's going to be a wide receiver 2. And Nico Collins, he's a lot of times going in the 2nd round. He had 109 targets last year. We need to see those targets go up, and now he has Stephon Diggs in his offense. Stephon Diggs has just as good a chance at being the wide receiver 1 in that offense, and he's going cheaper than Nico Collins in your fantasy drafts. Brandon Ayuk, again, he had like 104 targets last year. So Chris Olave in a terrible offense. There's plenty of guys going rounds 3 to 5 that are in terrible offenses, but are the alpha wide receivers in their offense. So to me, what's really the risk here?
So round 5 went T. Higgins, right? I took DK round 4, T. Higgins round 5. You're taking some safety after going upside with running backs, right? Yep. But then after you take that 3, 4, 5 running or wide receiver room, then the round 6 through like 10 are dominate your flex spot. Terry McLaurin was available. Calvin Ridley in the 7th is a good pick there. JSN in the 8th. Like, I'm feeling really good about the guys I'm going to have to flex this week. And I've got plenty of wide receivers to start now. If you're starting wide receivers, but
Ridley in the 7th.
Looking here, I know it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And I mean, I'll take Christian Watson here. Like, I'll take somebody with high upside again. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm still packing my wide receiver room here.
Can you tell what our quarterback strategy is this year?
And can you tell what our tight end strategy is?
Yeah.
Those are the 2 things you need to take away. Now we're a little bit down. We're down here a little bit later. And I am probably going to take a running back here. And I'm looking at all these guys. All these guys are going to be 2nd string running backs. I'm probably most comfortable with Chase Brown here. I think Chase Brown is a guy who could easily be the starter there this year, where there is actually a pretty much wide open competition in terms of Zach Moss doesn't have that thing on lock compared to guys like Kendra Miller behind Alvin Kamara,
right.
Zach Charbonnet with Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard with Jonathan Brooks, things like that.
Yeah, then you get past round 10, and this is where we like to take shots on all of our rookies.
Exactly. And
Rookie time.
So should we probably take a quarterback and tight end just for the sake of the example?
Go for Cousins.
So
Cousins
I think Kirk Cousins here is a fantastic pick. And then we're probably going to take tight end last. And again, we'll take a look at our team after this, but I'm feeling pretty good about this roster after going double running back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And yeah, my running back depth here is poor, but do keep in mind, running back waivers are far more competitive than wide receiver waivers come weeks 1, 2, and 3, right? So you have a good shot of getting some running back depth after you know which of those handcuffs are going to be the most valuable.
Right.
So wouldn't worry too much about it. And at tight end, who's left? Komet, Musgrave, Hill, Ben Sinnott. We like our rookie tight end there a lot. Who's your pick here, Nathan?
Sinnott.
Honestly, Sinnott is my pick too. And I'm fine punting tight end completely. I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah.
Because again,
it's just for the example. It's just for the people.
But let's look at this team. Like let's look at how this roster turned out. Starting Kirk Cousins at quarterback. I'm cool with that. Totally cool with it. You got Bijan in here. You've got Travis Etienne. This is the roster's screwed up, but you've got Debo. You've got Travis Etienne. You've got DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, Terry McLaurin, Calvin Ridley, JSN, Christian Watson, Chase Brown. I am totally comfortable with this wide receiver room. I'm totally comfortable with the running backs here. And so again, yes, you are forced to take a lot of wide receivers or a good amount of wide receivers after you take these running backs up top. But this is probably the year to do it based on the upside and based on the wide receiver 2 plateau that we see every year in fantasy. So do a huge favor. Drop a like. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you go to flockfantasy.com/domain. You get the draft guide. You get the rankings. You get everything. So like I said, use code domain. Sign up for the Mother Flocker tier to unlock all of that. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you later.